Welcome, Dave Ahrendt, to the podcast. I think I got the name right.
You did.
Good. So, Dave, you've been a member here for what, a year?
About a year.
Okay. That's what I was thinking, right? Coming up on a year. And we're looking for a podcast guest this week. And
You couldn't find anybody else?
No, not at all. Almer over here we had talked about having you on in the past and just how good of a job you've done. You've been really consistent and training hard and making all the stuff that we do here work for you. And we're just really impressed with how you've been doing here. And we thought we'd have you on and just get your story because you've got some experience training through before gyms probably were even like a huge thing around, like where there wasn't like a gym on every corner. You had to kind of go out of your way to probably find one and things like that. And I always like to dive into kind of the history of that because it's something that I think a lot of people now can't appreciate because there's, a gym every mile and a half or every half mile you go. So maybe give us like a little 5-minute synopsis. Like I like to hear that, and we'll dive deeper into things, but of like you growing up, maybe sports you played, activities you did growing up, and then we can kind of dive into like actual focus training maybe after college or into adulthood.
Well, I was a D1 athlete.
Okay.
But I never trained.
Okay.
I've told Dave this story. I didn't know what the inside of a training room looked like. I just played the sports. I played soccer and lacrosse.
Okay.
And my brother played for Johns Hopkins, and I played for Maryland. He used to kick our ass every.
Did you play lacrosse for Maryland?
Am I allowed to say ass?
Yeah. You can say whatever you want. Did you play lacrosse for Maryland?
Yeah, but I wasn't as good as my brother. He was very good.
Okay.
And,
I just know that's a big lacrosse school. It's huge out there. So.
Well, back in the day, there were two schools, Maryland and Hopkins.
Okay.
And now, of course, everybody has decided to play lacrosse.
Yep.
Ohio State has actually a really good men's and women's lacrosse team. But their men's team has been in the, I think, Final Four several times in the last 10 years.
Okay.
But then I got into a corporate career, and I didn't do anything for a long time. I did a lot of hours in the office, and I did a lot of travel. And one thing I learned is that travel really just takes it out of you. But long story short, when I was doing a lot of athletics, I never trained. I just did.
Went to practice and played.
And when you're playing that much sports, you're playing 2 to 4 hours a day, every day of your life. You're staying in pretty good shape.
Yep.
But I didn't really learn. Dave's even had seen me ask some really probably squirrely questions about, what do I do with that thing? What is that thing? But then I kind of got forced into an early retirement. I had to take care of my parents who got really sick, and I had to take care of both of them for about 6 years, every day. And so that takes it out of you.
Yep.
And so I started getting back into training a little bit just on my own here and there, doing some swimming, doing some little bit of weight training, not very much, because I never knew how to do it. And I always felt like I was going to hurt myself. But
when was this, like maybe 10 years ago, late 50s, or what time period is this?
Yeah, well, I was forced. I retired for the most part when I was 55 years old, so about 15 years ago. Mm-hmm. And that'll tell you how old I am. Anyway, but anyway, after my parents had passed on, which was about 7 years ago now, 7 years maybe, I ended up getting an infection, and it wasn't diagnosed very well, and it got bad. It went into my heart, went into my spine. I was 30 days in the hospital, flat on my back. They didn't even want me to come home from the hospital.
This is the one you were on vacation, right? This kind of
Yeah, I had gone
this a little bit. Yeah.
Right, I had some blood work done that actually showed it, but then I went on vacation and had to fly back on an emergency basis, and had to have an emergency surgery on Sunday morning, and I spent 30 days in the hospital, probably about 6 months on my back, because I had a PICC line dripping antibiotics into my heart. Long story short, you spend 6 months on your back doing nothing, and there's pretty much not much left of you.
Yeah.
And so I decided that if I got well, which was touch and go there for a little while, I would just dedicate myself to getting back into shape big time. And, so you're talking about like 30, 40 years of doing either being sick or having a corporate career and doing not much of anything as far as fitness is concerned. So I was in pretty bad shape. And probably my first endeavor was yoga. And I was doing some hot yoga, which I really enjoyed. It helped me develop some flexibility, and it helped me to get a little bit of strength back. But I found that it was pretty hard on my joints. I don't know if it was an age-related thing or whether I was not really doing it quite right. So I started doing more swimming and more training in the gym. And then I decided, well, I really need to get some help if I'm going to do more weight training, because I don't think I'm doing this right. And so I had there was another gym that I was using, and there was a trainer there helping me, and she was really good, but the gym was kind of geared towards fairly older people, and they didn't like the fact that I made a lot of noise when I worked out. And they called me, and I said, "What are you talking about?" They said, "Well, you breathe too loud." I said, "How can you breathe too loud?" I said, "Have you ever come to watch me?" This was the general manager of the place. They said, "No, we're not going to watch you. We just have to respond to complaints." I said, "You have complaints." So that's what kind of started me into finding a gym that was more receptive to
Loud noises.
Yeah, loud noises.
Yeah.
Aggressive training.
Being able to work, being able to train hard, not like, okay, I gotta.
Well, yeah.
It's not a library.
Not like you're in a funeral parlor.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, you don't have to worry about that here.
No, I don't think I make enough noise here. But anyway, I don't know how Cassie Whittingham, who I know very well, she recommended I stop down here, and I did, and I kind of started off with this what do you guys call it?
Elements?
The elements
class.
class,
Yep.
which really didn't suit me very well because I'm not a very good candidate for cross training, for the formal cross training program. And so I think I ran into you one day, Brandon, and I said, you said, "Well, what do you want to accomplish?" And I said, "I just want to get strong." And you said, you pointed me towards the Power Hour program with Dave. And so I started that, and I've really enjoyed it. I've learned a ton. That was really probably the first formal, I guess you'd call it, training I've had on weight training.
Wow. So I wouldn't have known that. I thought you had been someone who had been in and out of gyms, because you seem to know your way around, and like you've got some good capacity. So I just figured you had been a lifelong trainee. Now you certainly, if you played Division I lacrosse and soccer, you're waking some stuff back up that was there, So
I was an athlete when I was young, but then I lost all that.
Yeah.
And, I'd go through spurts when I was traveling. You get into a nice hotel or something, they'd have a nice weight room or a pool and stuff, and I'd use it. But then, then you travel for another month, and there was no consistency.
I know what you mean.
And so, one thing I've learned is that for me in my situation, I really need to. I treat this as a lifestyle. I don't have a goal like 6 months from now I want to be here. 6 months from now I want to be there. You know, I want to be here in 3 months so I can pig out on vacation. You know, my thing is the rest of my life.
Yep.
I want to stay in shape. I never want to have that happen to me again.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I'm working out here 3 to 4 times a week. I still do some swimming on my own. I do a lot of walking on my own. But it's really brought me a long way back. And I'm still learning stuff. Like recently I've learned about the importance of recovery. And especially at my age, 70, you know, recovery is huge. If I, you know, when I first started doing stuff, I would just do it 7 days in a row.
Yeah.
Well, that was actually counterproductive for me because I would wear myself out and I wouldn't want to come back to the gym, number one. Number two, I would, my muscles never had a chance to grow and recover. Yep. And so I've really focused on recovery. And then even more recently, I've learned a lot about this whole concept of endurance training. And so in addition to getting strong, this endurance element, I think has become pretty important to me in terms of developing some capacity for endurance. And Dave has helped me with that. Some of our one-on-one training, he focuses on weights, but other ones he focuses on what I would call endurance training. Yep. I mean, there's days that I get done with Dave and I pretty much have a tough time walking out to the car.
Yeah.
But so, you know, I'm still learning, you know, learn all the time because I didn't know anything about it. So it's kind of like a blank sheet of paper. Mm-hmm. But I've gotten a lot stronger. I sent Dave a note, I don't know, a month ago or so, maybe not even that long, where I went into...
Last week you sent that?
Yeah, I went into, every 4 to 6 months I get my body analytics done with that electrical current system, and I don't know what that's called. But the recent one, I've been working with the same person ever since I was sick back in 2019, and she got these results and she looked very surprised and she said, "Dave, what are you doing?" And I told her exactly what I'm doing, and she said, "Well, whatever you're doing, it's working." And she pointed to a couple of the indicators. I actually was going to bring the paper in here, but I left it in the car. But and I can't tell you what all the acronyms are and stuff. But she said, "Dave, your cellular," I think she called it cellular metabolism, the ability of the cells in your body to utilize energy, I guess the best explanation I can give for it. She said, "You used to be like a 60-year-old, which I thought that was pretty good. And she said, "But now you're in a level of like a 40-year-old.
Wow.
And I swear to God, Brandon, I had tears in my eyes because from going from having 11 doctors in my hospital room arguing over who was going to get priority treating me to feeling like I was a 40-year-old, really just sent a message to me that was, you know, tremendous. It was like, you know, you can really do this.
Yeah.
Your body can heal and you can regenerate this strength. In fact, I even had a doctor tell me one time, not going to mention any names, but when I was in the hospital, he said, "You know, Dave, you've lost 10 years on your life. You're never going to get back." Well, I was really mad that he told me that.
Sure.
You know, why would you tell a guy lying on his, you know, deathbed almost that you've lost 10 years of your life? That's a decade.
It's a real thing to give someone confidence there. Like, come on, man.
So
Some good bedside manner there, yeah.
I said some not very nice things to him.
Sure.
Which I won't repeat here on a microphone. But at the end of the conversation, I said, "You know what, Doc? I'm going to get those 10 years back, and I'm going to get 10 years on top of that."
There
How's
you go.
that? And, of course, he never came back and talked to me again.
Sure.
But I feel like I'm on a trajectory to do just that.
Absolutely.
And you know, I monitor my blood work a lot, you know, very carefully. I use a Boston Heart Analysis up in Boston. I use some other stuff here. I use those physical analytics that they do with that electrical machine that they use. But you know, I'm probably, for my age, my guess is now I'm at least in the top 10%.
Absolutely.
And my goal is to be like in the top 1%. But it's one thing I've learned is it doesn't happen fast.
Yep.
It happens, but you got to give it time, and you got to. The whole issue of consistency is. I mean, if I was trying to teach somebody about training, I'd say, if you're not willing to be consistent, don't even start, because it's just a waste of time.
Yep.
Because whatever you gain, you're going to lose it right back again. You're going to gain it and lose it. Eventually, you're going to give up. But if you're consistent, and I can't emphasize either enough the importance, like how much Dave has helped me. Because, I mean, I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, there are times when Dave would walk over to me and say, what are you doing? And I'd say, well, I don't really know what I'm doing today.
We have a good jabbing rapport. I'm not yelling at you like, what are you doing? We bust each other's balls, but yeah.
But you know, having somebody that can, you know, coach you along the way. I don't know how I really don't know how you could do this without that. You can't get it out of a book. I've
be
tried.
Surprised at how many people it's a pride factor. Like especially in men, I think women are a lot more receptive to help in training oftentimes. Now, men will come do classes and things, but they want to have a feeling that they have it all figured out. And for you to be humble enough.
Well, Dave says I'm pretty much like a girl, so.
But no, and what I really liked, and to kind of rewind, is your mindset's everything. You know, when you were getting into it with that doctor who said, hey, man, you know, we just peeled 10 years off your life, and you're like, you know, screw that. Like, no way, we did not, like, that's not true. And then you got yourself, it fired you up. And then it didn't just get you fired up how, like, when someone has 10 beers, they get fired up. And then when they wake up the next day, like, I'm not going to go start the training now. You kept that in your head and you kept going. That is, that's unique. Like, a lot of people don't have that in them. And that's really cool that you were able to, like, keep that as your North Star and keep going, you know?
I wish I could give myself a pat on the back, but the truth of it is, Brandon, I was scared.
Yeah.
I was scared.
Sure.
I've thought about writing a book called Scared to Health, because
I like that. I buy that book.
you know, I didn't know if I was ever going to get out of the hospital.
Yeah.
And I lost 50 pounds in 30 days.
Wow.
They were weighing me 3 times a day to see how fast my weight was going down. I guess at some point you just die.
Yeah.
How
low did you get?
I got down to below 195.
Okay.
So I lost a lot of. Now I was overweight when I went in there, but I think some of my overweightness was the infection that I had.
Sure.
So I probably had gained 10 or 15 pounds of water weight just because of the infection. But yeah, I lost 50 pounds in 30 days. And I tell people that, they don't even believe me. They say, well, that's not possible.
Yeah.
But no, it's been a journey. I'm still learning stuff all the time. You know, I just, to me, the most important thing is treating it as a lifestyle.
Yeah.
I'm retired. My wife still works. I have 2 wonderful daughters in college. One that's just finishing up at the Air Force Academy. One who's just starting at Colorado State into working into their veterinary program. Anyway,
Doesn't one of your daughters do CrossFit out there? The one in the Air Force, or no?
My niece.
Oh, niece. Okay.
My niece manages a CrossFit studio out in San Diego.
Okay. Cool.
she went to Dartmouth. She was on their soccer team, then their rugby team. Then she played on the U.S. national rugby team for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she was quite the athlete, and now she runs a CrossFit gym. I guess there's probably a lot of them in San Diego.
San Diego, it's big. Yeah, it is big out there.
I think you asked me one day which one. I don't know which one.
Okay.
But yeah, I have everything to live for, and my wife has been incredibly supportive as she's kind of watched me go through this journey. In fact, I'm now trying to help her because she works a lot of hours. She works like a true 80 hours a week, and if she doesn't try to, we've kind of created a gym in our loft at home with a Pilates machine and a treadmill and some weights to help her because she doesn't have time to get to a gym.
Yeah.
And so she's working on, at least spending 30 minutes a day.
How much longer is she going to work like that?
Well, the trajectory is 3 years.
Okay. I was like, I don't want to get her in trouble at work or anything.
No.
80 hours a week is
oh yeah, maybe I shouldn't have talked about that.
no, it's okay. No. I doubt this is going to come across the plate of her employer. So.
Yeah, no, they all know how much she works.
Yeah,
she starts working at 4 a.m. in the morning every day.
Oof.
7 days a week. She's very dedicated to her profession, and she enjoys it.
Yep.
And she's very successful, probably one of the most successful people in the state. But she needs to also. I don't want her going down the track I went down.
Sure.
Yeah. Yep.
And so she needs to focus on her fitness and her health.
The scared to health thing was, and not quite as an extreme manner as you, like, I guess with a long hospital stay, but is really what led me ultimately down this track as well. I got mono when I was 26. Now I was working as a trainer and I was boxing and doing some sports, but overall I had a lot of like unhealthy behaviors. I'd go party pretty dang hard every weekend, Friday and Saturday night. I was dipping throughout the day, drinking energy drinks, and then I just got so sick that I woke up in the middle of the night. I just went and sat on the toilet because I didn't know if I was going to go out of either end, and I passed out and my head went through the wall. And
wow.
And then I couldn't move for about 10 days, and I got diagnosed with mono. That's, I think, where they were just like, well, you do have the Epstein-Barr. I was just so sick I couldn't move. And whatever it was in me, it gave me that bridge to like, okay, I couldn't drink a cup of coffee if my life depended on it. I'm like, I'm quitting dipping. No more frozen pizzas at night. Like all the BS just stopped. And about a year later, after I cleaned all that out, I mean, I was in by far the best shape of my life, started really getting into the CrossFit stuff, but it was all because of a huge scare like that. Otherwise, I mean, there was no reason, like I'd want to kind of stop this stuff, but nothing pushed me hard enough to actually change any of those behaviors. And then I was like, I'm going to die. My like throat was so swollen, I could barely like swallow. And I almost had to go to the hospital. And, that scared to health thing, I think, is a really, it's a horrible thing to happen, but it can be a real gift.
Well, people, I actually read an article about that said that sometimes people go through what I did, and they change their life so much because I've changed everything. I don't drink any alcohol anymore at all. Anheuser-Busch won't like me saying that, but I haven't had a drop of alcohol in probably 6 years now, at least. And I don't even use the mouthwash that has alcohol in it.
Yep.
Just because I don't want anything to do with it. But it's come a long way, and you're talking about behaviors, and I think I've changed almost every behavior I had.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think is huge is stress management. And, now I used to always.
So, Dave, you were talking about stress management.
Yeah, I think stress management is huge. I mean, I used to be one of those people that if anything affecting anybody in my life was a problem, I was the fix-it guy.
Yep.
And, you can't fix everything for everybody. People have to fix their own stuff. But that's not what I thought. I would try to fix everything. And now I'm just to the point where, I care. I'm very empathetic about people, but I don't let things stress me out. I'll just walk away from a situation and, say, it is what it is.
I need to get better at that. I'm not in that phase of my life yet.
You need to get into it, because if somebody's going to change or somebody's going to fix something in their life, they're going to do it without you.
Yep.
And you kind of deciding you're going to micromanage something for somebody, or even a situation in your own life. You just can't do it. You've got to, you just got to relax about life. And I'll tell you the other thing that I've learned is about sleep. I used to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning myself. And now, if I don't get 9 hours at least, usually 10 hours of sleep at night, I feel like I've been robbed.
Yeah.
It really, the sleep component is huge. I think that probably ties into the whole recovery thing too.
100%.
On a daily basis. But, I try to get 10 hours sleep a night. It may sound ridiculous, but to a lot of people, because, a lot of people that are working probably get 6-7 hours sleep. But if you don't get at least 8 or 9 hours sleep, in my opinion, you're making withdrawals from the bank that eventually there won't be anything left in the bank to withdraw.
Well, you'll get sick, and you're not going to be as productive with the time you do have. Yeah. So if you have that 8 or 9 hours under your belt, you're gonna plow through work twice as fast, because you're going to be sharp mentally, physically, in all of those ways. For me, I would say, I don't know if it's the chicken or the egg, but when I am in my best physical condition, I'm sleeping well. And that is the one factor that I can always point to, where it's like, if I'm getting 8 or 9 solid hours of sleep a night, I'm leaner, I'm performing in my workouts, I don't get hurt. When I'm not, I start getting hurt, I start putting on body fat, I start under recovering, I'm less mentally acute. All of those factors go, and for me, that is that's my constant battle.
Yeah. I can't explain to you everything that happens to the human body when you're asleep, but there must be something magical happening.
Yeah.
Because, if you get enough sleep, it's a life changer. Yeah. So, between stress management, not drinking alcohol, focusing on training and sleep, and a good healthy diet. I cook all of our own meals, so I changed everything. There isn't anything about my life I haven't changed, and it's made such a huge difference that, just like that article I read, that sometimes people go through these experiences and then they come out of it even better than they would have.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, because they wouldn't have learned these lessons. Unfortunately, they're pretty tough lessons to learn. I think I've told Dave multiple times that 6-month period after I got out of the hospital were gruesome. Well, I was still pretty much in bed every day for the first 4 months, and then an occupational therapist was helping me. I couldn't walk to the mailbox and back without somebody having a safety harness around me in the driveway, walking down and back. And then our next goal was to the corner. The corner wasn't very far away, and there were times I'd get to the corner and I'd wonder whether I could get back to the house. Yeah. And it was horrible. And you're when you're in the middle of that journey, you're kind of alone. Your wife can't really help you, be with you. You just have to decide on your own that you're going to tackle this thing. But there were multiple times that we'd have these short walks with a therapist, and I felt like I wouldn't be able to get back to the house. I was just going to collapse. That's how worn out my body had become.
How long, what was the bridge? What was the battle like? So you're going from, okay, I'm going to the mailbox, I'm going to the corner. Do you ever remember a turning point where you hit something, you're like, man, I'm starting to feel a little bit better, a little bit more like myself, where it was like, now I want to maybe get a real workout in? Because that sounds, that is a big hill to climb there.
Yeah. I don't know what I guess, there was, once I got out of the hospital, there was a solid 4 months plus that I was still flat on my back, except for going to the bathroom. And then there was probably about a 2-month process where the insurance would pay for therapy. And so they would come to the house.
Yep.
So, month in the hospital, 4 months, 2 months, that's like 7 months. And then I just started taking short walks on my own. I had a walker. That's how bad I was. I was using a walker. And I would take short walks on my own. And then I started yoga. And I figured, yoga might be something. And I started a hot yoga routine, and it was fabulous. And the people there were so supportive. I remember I went into the hot yoga studio the very first time. It was a place called Harbor Yoga up in Dublin.
Yep. I know them.
It's the most wonderful set of people you could ever meet in your life. And I went in. I didn't know what to expect, so I go in the back in the corner and try to hide. And I got done. I did the whole yoga session, and I was lying there on my back, and I tried to get up, and I couldn't. My back started spasming. And I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but, but it's painful.
Me and Dave are pros with back spasms.
And so Angie came over, one of the owners, just one of the most wonderful people I've ever met in my life. And she said, "Dave, are you okay?" And I said, "Well, Angie, I'm okay. You don't need to call the ambulance." But I said, "I can't get up right now. And you're going to have to give me probably 20, 25 minutes to slowly get my body off the ground." Mm-hmm. And she said, "Fine. We don't have a class right now, so take your time." And so I did. Eventually, I was able to kind of do this log roll routine they taught me in the hospital. And I kind of rolled myself over and got to my feet. But it probably took me almost a half an hour to get out of the yoga studio. And I talked to her afterwards. I said, "Angie, you probably don't want me to come back." And she said, No, you come as many times as you want." So I bought a year-long membership.
Was that your first class?
That was my very first yoga class.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Ever.
Okay.
I'd never been in a yoga class.
Yeah.
And it was a hot yoga studio. And
I know that studio well, and actually went there when I was going through a hard time with an injury. I lived right around the corner by the barn.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And some condos back there. So it was like 2-minute drive for me. And this is about 15 years ago. Dave might even remember I'd really hurt my back at the gym. And when we had first kind of met, and I spent probably 3 days a week in there for 2 or 3 months. And Angie, they were great. They really helped me out when I was going through it. So
they have a real sense of community there.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of why I enjoy coming here to CrossFit Grandview too. Is that I get support from Dave, and then in the classes that I'm in the Power Hour, I've gotten to know quite a few of the people that are in those classes. And you get a real sense of community. I mean, you're not like working with people one-on-one.
Sure.
But you're with a group, and if especially if the females in the group are doing something that I can't do, that really eggs me on. So, if she can do that, I can sure as heck do that. But some of those women are very strong.
Oh yeah.
So, but yeah, it's been a long journey. That first 6 months out of the hospital, it wasn't much of a life. And I said to myself, if this is what life's going to be, it's not very interesting.
Yeah. No, it makes sense.
My wife was coming home 4 times a day because she had to change the antibiotic bags to give me new antibiotics. And she'd have to come in, and we'd have to go through this routine because I had an IV drip, and in my the port was here, but it actually dripped right into my heart. It's called what do they call it? A pick.
Yeah.
And but you just got to take one step at a time, and coming from one step out of bed to one step to the mailbox to one step of the corner to now I can do pretty much a whole hour with Dave in the power hour, and I may not do quite as much as everybody else, but I'm doing most of it.
I mean, it's such a it's a small enough group we can really keep an eye on people, and we'll modify things based on people's abilities and needs and things like that. So we get the job done.
What was the infection? What was it that you had? What did they say that
they're not exactly sure. It was probably originated in I have an enlarged. A lot of men have enlarged prostates.
Yep.
I had an extremely enlarged prostate. In fact, the surgery I had when I came back from vacation was a TURP, which was a transurethral resection of the prostate, where they take just a little bit out, and that kind of helped me get everything going again. But what had happened, I think, is that I was so backed up that the infection probably happened in my bladder.
Gotcha.
But then it spread. It was
all over your body.
It was in my spine. The spine doctor showed me an X-ray of my spine or a CAT scan or something, and it literally looked like my lumbar section of my spine was on fire. Ooh. I couldn't even look at it. I took one look at it, and I just looked away because I realized that was my body, and I had an infection in my heart, in one of the valves, and I'll never forget. After going through this whole process, I went for a follow-up with my cardiologist, and he told me, he said, Dave, well, I wasn't in his office. He called me. He said, I got some news for you. Of course, at that point, I was expecting anything. And he said, your latest, they do a special examination of the heart where they go down into the esophagus and examine it from there. It's easier for them to get good pictures. And he said, not only is your infection completely gone, he said, I can't even see where you ever had an infection.
That's great.
Yeah, well, your heart's the number one issue of all of the issues. And he said, if I saw you tomorrow, I'd see you as a brand new patient. He said, with never having had any problems. So knock on wood, that was just, I think, sheer luck that I got back, got some good medical treatment under my belt. But I think I cried that day too. But it's been a journey. But I feel better now than I felt probably in not just 5 or 6 years, but probably in 30 or 40 years. Because when you're just traveling all the time, getting on airplanes, getting off airplanes. There was a time in my life where if before I would open the blackout curtains when I woke up in a hotel room, I couldn't remember what city I was in.
Yeah.
Because I was traveling so much.
What was the nature of your work? What did you do?
Well, I was in kind of a crossover between the insurance and investments world. A lot of the traveling I was doing was international, so you had long flights. Man, those flights really take it out of you.
Were you drinking on the plane too?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I mean, that mix of like kind of dehydrated drinking, like I know what that's like and how that makes you feel.
Makes you feel terrible.
Yeah.
No, I really didn't have a healthy lifestyle at all. And now my focus is every day, every week, number one issue is maintaining a healthy lifestyle.
Yeah.
Consistency, learning, just sticking with it. And it was like I said earlier, I don't have a specific goal. My goal is to be fit, fit for life, I guess. I think somebody wrote a book called Fit for Life. But it's just I want to be strong because everything I've read says, you really need to maintain your strength.
Yeah. And
I can tell you, I've got problems from sports with both of my knees. And I remember when I first started working with Dave, he started teaching me some exercises to start building knee strength and quad strength and hamstring strength and calf strength and all that stuff. And I would say a year ago I couldn't walk up a flight of stairs any time without pain. And now I think I told Dave, and just in the last couple of weeks, I don't have any pain. I can walk up and down stairs and no pain. I mean, what is that worth?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like worth $1 million.
Absolutely.
So, being able to live pain-free and healthy and enjoying every day, it's priceless.
A lot of people at your age, they just start getting their knees replaced and their hips
Well,
replaced instead of training it.
Yeah, I had a knee replacement scheduled twice, and the second time it was like 2 or 3 days before the surgery. I canceled it, and then I said to myself, "Nah, I'm going to try something else." They also wanted to do a rotator cuff surgery on me, and I didn't let that happen either. And now I don't have any restriction in my movement in my shoulders at all. And and then I've made Dave aware of all this stuff, so he helps me figure out how to modify exercises so that they really suit. I still have some injuries
Sure.
there, but there's pretty much nothing I can't do. I mean, there's a few things I can't do, but there's some things that I've learned how to do that can really build strength in my shoulders and my legs and my knees that don't hurt it. So it's a godsend. Being able to walk up and down a flight of stairs, people might take that for granted, but I don't. And it's
when your knees
huge.
hurt, no, that's not fun. I know how that can feel. That sucks when every step you take is
It hurts. Yeah, I don't have that anymore.
That'll ruin your day.
Yeah, man, I was walking around town doing whatever, my errands, my routine, the other day, and I realized that I had kind of a bounce in my step.
Yeah.
And I can't remember the last time I had a bounce in my step.
Do you golf or do anything outside of?
I used to play a lot of golf,
okay.
and I haven't picked it back up again. My total focus is just fitness.
Sure.
And at my age, I would tell you I love golf, but I don't care if I ever play another round of golf.
Sure.
But I do care if I can't get back in the gym.
Yep.
I mean, I want to work out, and I want to keep getting stronger. And I don't think I'm anywhere near where I really want to get to at some point. I mean, you think at 70, you'd probably just be happy to maintain, but I'm not cut out that way.
You haven't maxed. I don't think you've maxed out where you're going at all.
Yeah, I need.
You've gotten far, but you haven't maxed out where you can get to.
Yeah, I'd like to lose another 10 or 15 pounds, and I'd like to just keep getting stronger, and to the point where I just I could really feel in touch with my physical capability, and I'm not quite there yet. But
yeah,
I'm getting there.
Yeah, absolutely. The one tip, and it's from my wife, and it for that weight loss, and this is unsolicited advice, but you may already do it, but eat your dinner early at like 5, and then don't eat anything after that.
Yeah, well, that's what we do anyway.
There we go. So I just said, like, you might already do this.
We're not quite to, what do they call those early meals where you get
the early bird
special? Yeah, we're not quite to the early bird specials yet, but we eat it at 5:30 or 6, and that's.
And if you don't munch after that while you're sitting around eating peanuts or popcorn or chips or things, because that's where everyone goes sideways, like where we always see it with people. It's hard. It's hard to eat early, and then because that's when you have your downtime, and then your hands get fidgety and you want to eat. So we always tell people, hey, if you can eat dinner, nothing after that, when you're chilling out for 3 hours, that's your biggest battle from a food standpoint.
Yeah, I've tried a lot of, and that's good advice, but I've also tried a lot of diet stuff over especially the last 6 or 7 years. But the one thing that's kind of stuck with me, and especially in the last 6 months, I kind of learned is just if you can just simply eat whatever you want, but cut calories.
Sure.
I mean, if you can cut your calories by 20, 30, maybe even 50% in certain cases, you're going to lose weight. So what I've learned is the one trick in my mind is always leave food on my plate. I never used to do that. I used to eat everything plus everything else I could find. But now I really consciously, when I'm done eating, is make sure there's food left on my plate.
Yep.
And if nothing else, it gets your mind in the thought process of, why am I eating this? Am I eating this just for kicks, for fun, because it tastes good? or for nutrition. And if you really focus on the nutrition side of it, you don't need all that food.
Yeah.
You know, when I grew up, you know, my parents put enough mashed potatoes on the plate. Of course, they were trying to fill us up for the least amount of money. But, you know, there was mashed potatoes on the plate. It looked like a pile of mashed potatoes.
Yep.
And so that's how I learned how to eat, like mass quantities. But now I've really kind of just learned just eat what you need to eat and stop.
Yeah.
And if you can cut your calories, I think that's what's led to the 10 pounds that one nutrition person I work with told me is just, you know, just cut the calories, and don't be so, you know,
on what you're eating.
Yeah,
like,
don't worry so much
Yep.
about what. I mean,
Yep.
eat. Try to eat healthy, but you know, I think the biggest tip is, in my opinion, on diet is, you know, just eat real food.
Yep.
Versus stuff coming out of a bag or a can or
Sure.
package. But you know, I eat a steak for breakfast every day.
Yeah.
Not a whole steak.
Yeah.
You know, I'll get a nice ribeye, and that'll usually, by the time I trim it from fat, that'll last me 3 breakfasts.
Yeah.
But I eat steak for breakfast every day of my life, and
That's good workout fuel right there.
yeah, that's you know, one of the tricks I've learned, and I enjoy steak, so that's
Yep.
fun. You know, and then I have a smoothie with a lot of homegrown yogurt and a lot of probiotic in there. So, you know, I'm kind of a carnivore, I guess.
Yeah.
But anyway.
It's working for you. Well, Dave, we're running out of time here. This has been awesome.
Didn't even get to talk about all his sauces and relishes and bruschetta.
We're going to get into that
jars
on the
full of
next
stuff.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have dude, this has been great. You've dropped probably more nuggets for people who are listening to this. Like, I'd say like overarching like concepts for them to like really look at. A lot of people here, they get lost in the weeds of like the micro details of, you know, oh, well, what's the best like movements to do or food to eat? Like, you're giving all these good like overarching concepts that have like created this huge momentum for you. Is there anything else or like a big thing?
Yeah,
that just
I guess if there's one thing I would focus on, in my opinion, that's helped me come back and really survive, is the community and support from people. At first, it was Harbor Yoga, and Angie helping me, and you know, now it's Dave, and you know, you guys here at CrossFit. Yeah, the community helps you. There's something to that.
Yeah.
It's not just words. I don't know what the science behind it is, but you know, when you don't feel like going, but you know there are people there expecting you to come, that is a motivator. And you know, there's always days we don't feel like showing up at the gym. I think there's a lot of days Dave doesn't feel like showing up because I'm showing up. But anyway, you know, I believe that human beings are a community animal, and we need community. We need other people to support us and to help us and guide us. And I couldn't have done it without that. I couldn't have done it without you guys. I couldn't have done it without Harbor Yoga. I couldn't have done it without some other trainers along the way that were fabulous for me. And, you know, my wife helps me, kicks my ass all the time. But it's just that sense of community is, I think, enormously important. And if I had to put one thing at the top of the list, because that will help you survive all the other challenges and stuff. But anyway.
No, I think you nailed it right there. Thank you so much, Dave.